got back from the school, and I haven't seen that many students. I've just been visiting, getting to know them. But I just wanted to reflect a little bit on it. A friend of mine, Becca, shared a great post today thinking about like if she had seen someone like herself when she was younger, what that would have done for her. And that got me reflecting on that too. Like, if I had met me or someone just like me when I was a teenager, what would that have opened up for me? What would that have taught me? What potentials would that have made available to me that I didn't know about? And it's just interesting, like especially I'm at the age where a lot of people are having babies and thinking about this new life. And one of the students in the school is actually going to be a parent soon, and just like looking at that transition, going from being an individual, a youth, to being a parent, parenting a baby that is now the young one. It's like we're traveling into this different role of life, and yet here I am, and I'm not planning to have any babies anytime soon, and maybe someday, but at the same time I'm now working with kids and youth, so I'm like taking on sort of these parental um, attributes. And it's interesting. I mean, that's why I love being a therapist, and I really love working with teens in particular because I'm not their parent. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a police officer. I'm not a probation officer. And so I really have this like unique form of relating to these young people where I'm not a disciplinarian. I don't have an agenda for our session. I don't have any expectations that they do this or that in our time together. It's really open. I'm really there to support them. I remember one time in my training, I was in school and I was working with a 17-year-old, and I was like 22 at the time. So, there really wasn't that much between us. Of course, there was huge amounts of like other kinds of differences between us because I was in graduate school and he was trying to graduate high school. Uh, but I remember the day that I told him that I wasn't even being paid, that I was actually paying to be in school and in internship and to work with him. And that really like changed our relationship because he was like, I don't understand. Like, well, you're literally just here because you want to help me. And with these youth, I mean, I'm not from here. I'm only here a short time right now. Would love to have a long-term relationship with the community here, but right now I'm only here for a couple months. And I'm just trying to offer what, like, honestly, just the life experience and what I've observed about the human condition. And I'm not a therapist that like has ever really closely followed the DSM-5 and all these diagnoses and labels and forms of intervention. I mean, like I can, well, I have to remember, but I used to speak the jargon pretty well enough. But really, I'm very real with these people, with these kids, and especially because these kids are not like when we learned in school, in therapy school, social work school, how to work with a 14-year-old, it doesn't just apply all. Like these youth here are so much older than a 14-year-old in a different situation because there's a lot of, very young parents and youth that end up like being the parents, parentifying and taking care of the people older than them. I mean, that can happen anywhere, but especially just in this community, it's kind of just making me realize and reflect on the fact that, like this child is going to be a parent. And like, I don't even know what that's like. And obviously their experience of being a parent in this environment is really different than some of the contexts of people that I went to school with and are becoming parents. And yet at the same time, they're both going to be adults responsible for taking care of babies and raising them. And that makes someone not just 14 anymore. It makes them an adult in some ways, and yet they're still a child in other ways. So it's a very fascinating situation to be in. I remember I had a client one time. She was 15. No. She was 20 and she had a 5-year-old daughter. And she'd had her at 15. And when this client was 15, no, her mother had had her when she was 15. And so she had been the 5-year-old daughter when her mother was 20. And it was this really interesting parallel because the same woman was raising both of them. So the same aunt of the original mother, well, I guess her sister, raised her daughter. And then here I was working with the daughter who was grown up and now had a daughter who was being raised by the same woman who had raised her, who was her aunt. And it was just really fascinating to get to be reflecting on this nuance of being both a child and an adult at the same time. And, I was working with another client who was 12 years old and I like held up. I was like, well, at 12, you can be like a kid or you can be more like a teen. And it's just really fascinating to ask someone at that age, 7th and 8th grade, where they feel like they are, especially in an environment where they're constantly exposed to people much older, like, 18-year-olds and much younger. There's like a lot of young people. And so it's just interesting, like getting this perspective on what I can impart to these young people that will actually provide them with a skill set, tools, awareness, education that they can bring with them and carry with them, because I'm not going to be here long enough to work through every traumatic experience that they've been through. That's kind of just not realistic expectation. And so what I can do is share with them, like I really I've noticed this in my individual private clients as well, that I really like teaching. I really like providing like educational awareness around the issues that people are confronting. So I like to use analogies and metaphors, and I would like to have a whiteboard and an iPad so that I can like really be like illustrating different things and concepts. I'm not so much the type to just be like, and how did that make you feel? And how did that make you feel? Like, I don't know. Everyone has a different style, and some works for some and some work for others, but I like to be really real. I like to be really authentic and not try to be this tabula rasa, this like blank slate that they kind of teach you to be in traditional Western colonized psychotherapeutic intervention. And of course, like there's good reasons for that, because it's not about me. It's definitely not about me. It's about the client. And yet at the same time, I think especially as a younger person still, working with even younger people, it really helps to like be transparent about the fact that it wasn't that long ago that I was a teenager. And my experience as a teenager was completely different than these teenagers' experience, but we both were at that age and experimenting and exploring and learning and going through similar challenges. And so I don't know, I just really like that. I like being able to be like, yeah, well, you know what, I had this experience and this is what I learned from it, and I made this mistake and this is what I learned from it. Because it, like, I'll tell an example. I know I'm kind of rambling. I haven't gone live in a while, and I'm challenging myself to do this every day for a month. And I'm trying to get more people following me on YouTube as opposed to Facebook for several reasons. One being that my Facebook has become almost like a professional networking place as much as, or like more so than a personal sharing platform. And I'm fine with that, but there's a piece of me that kind of misses being able to be more of my whole self. And obviously I could be, but I just don't feel called to like share in the way of Twitter almost, or like on Instagram. Like I'll be more personal on there and just share like random things or random memes. Like I just kind of feel like you have a limited amount of attention that you can get from people and these algorithms. And so I really would rather use that to spread awareness about things I'm really passionate about, or moments where I really do need specific support, or I really feel something that I want to share with a greater community. But I feel like I want to be a little more personal. And I think that moving it to this platform, YouTube, where people actually have to go out of their way a little bit to see these videos, they have to actually like subscribe and decide they want to follow. So anyway, tangent. So I was telling a story. I took a class, I think I was actually an undergrad, and it was about adolescent psychology. And I was, again, like 20, so I was technically still an adolescent. And so the teacher asked us to write down everything we could possibly write down that we would want to share with a teenager about sex. So he wrote on the whiteboard all these things like STIs and pregnancy and consent and all of these different topics, right? We filled up the board. We spent like half an hour, 20 students, writing down every single thing we would want a young person to know about sex. And then the teacher was like, there's something missing. And we were like, oh, I don't know what it is, but, boundaries and UTIs and like anything. We were just like, really like, okay, what is it that we missed? And he looked over the board and he said, nowhere on here did you write that sex feels good. And if you are not sharing that truth with these youth that are only perhaps instinctually aware that sex can feel good, then they're not going to take anything else you say seriously. They're not going to recognize you as authentic. They're not going to see you as being real, because obviously, like, that's a big draw of the sexual experience is that it's pleasurable. It can be. And so by not revealing that to these youth, by not stating that, by not being real and transparent enough to say, hey, guess what? Sex feels good. And here's a huge list of other things to consider about sex. It was just really eye-opening to me. And really, I like that example of how sometimes when we are in a position where we're like trying to take care of someone else or teach someone else, we forget to be completely real and transparent and like personal in a way and to our personal human experience, because even though I don't have a lot in common with these young people, at the same time, like, all teens go through certain things. Like, there are parties and there are crushes and there are these things that are appearing, and for a lot of these youth it's happening when they're like 11 and 12, as opposed to in some other communities that lifestyle might not be available until they're 18. And so I'm going to do my best to be real and authentic and share about my experience and being a therapist. And because of my personality, I've had a lot of experiences talking to people about their personal past and their kind of like inner experience. So it's not only my own story that I can share, but those of so many that I've been close to. So that's really my intention, just to be real and be a person, like that positive role model that I wish that I'd had when I was that age. Like, my parents are amazing and that's great, but I had a babysitter that was really awesome, and she would like take me to my first manicure and to the movies and to my first concert, and that was really special to me. And part of me is really sad that I'm not able to be there for her daughter in that way, just because I don't live there anymore. And so I want to be that person. I want to be someone that they can trust and look up to and see as a real and authentic adult that literally is just here to offer support and guidance in whatever way I can, and not have an agenda, not have an expectation. And of course, it's hard not to, be like, well, you should finish school. I do believe that, but to really step back and be like, well, look, these are the pros of finishing school, and these are the cons, and these are the pros of not finishing it, and these are the cons. And just being really real, because it's not my job to guide these young people. They're not my children. They're not my students. They are people that I believe Spirit has connected me to be here for, just to offer some tools and open their minds and their awareness to things that they might not otherwise be exposed to. So that's my check-in for today. I have not eaten much today. I need to do better at structuring my food around being busy. It's an old story for me, and now I'm making pasta, and that's what I always default to. But anyway, different story for a different day.